We can't speak the truth in our heart if we don't know the truth. So first off, you've got to know Jesus.
If this baby's not going to make it, that's God's decision, not mine.
But when God gave us children, I set those things aside to raise my kids and pour into them the love of God, the Word of God.
Having a closed border and understanding that we can love people, but also loving people can be upholding the values of our country.
Hi everyone, so we are out here today in Dallas at YWLS with Turning Point USA, and I just met an amazing supporter and beautiful soul, and I want you guys to listen to her story.
Hi, my name is Jessica. This is my beautiful daughter, Eliza. When I was pregnant with her, I actually was told 3 times that I should be aborting. The first time I was only about 7 weeks pregnant, and my HCG levels had dropped, and the doctor called to let me know that I was going to be expecting a miscarriage, and that if the miscarriage didn't happen, I could come in on Monday morning and she would induce the miscarriage. Now, obviously, with pregnancy brain, not thinking, I told my husband, I said, yeah, of course I'm going to miscarry, and if I don't miscarry, let's go in on Monday, they're going to induce it. And my husband looked at me and he said, Jessica, that's an abortion. You can't do that. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I thought about, there are so many women out there who don't have the same education and resources that we do to understand these things. And they listen to the doctors. And of course, if a doctor's saying it, they're going to go through with it. And thank God I do have the education and the resources to know otherwise and the support system. And then because I'm diabetic, I had a 17-week anatomy scan, and the doctor called me into his office. And he said to me, your baby has fetal skeletal dysplasia. The baby's not going to make it past 6 months in utero. And I broke down in tears. And he said to me, you're still early enough to terminate. And I just thought to myself, that's not my call to make. If this baby's not going to make it, that's God's decision, not mine. And I'm not going to be the one to make that call. And so I
Chills, oh my gosh.
I said to him, I want another opinion. And he said, okay, you can come in 3 more weeks and we'll do another scan, but I don't see anything changing. So again, at 20 weeks, I went in for my anatomy scan, and they did the scan, and he said, the baby's still not continuing to grow. You can still get a termination. The baby's chest cavity is not going to grow big enough to accommodate its lungs and its heart, and it's not going to make it past 6 months in utero. And I broke down in tears again, and I said, that's not my call to make. That's God's call to make. And if this baby is going to die inside me, then let it die inside me. But I'm not making that call. I'm not aborting my child. And even if my child is born with an anomaly or dwarfism, I'm still going to love that child no matter what. And so we ended up going for a second opinion. You want to see the rain? We went for another opinion at Johns Hopkins, and the doctor told me, she said, it's not going to be life-threatening. Sorry. It's not going to be life-threatening, but the baby may have decreased life value. And she asked me, she said, we could still terminate. And at this point, I was 24 weeks. And I said, At 24 weeks, my baby could be born alive. My baby is alive. I'm not making that decision. And so they offered me this testing and that testing. And I said, you know what, let the baby be born, and we go from there. So my daughter was born at 36 weeks and 5 days, and they did a genetic panel on her birth. And the only issue she has is genetic short stature. My daughter will be petite her whole life. There's nothing wrong with her. Right. And these doctors kept trying to push on me that your daughter's going to have growth issues. Your daughter's going to have this, going to have that. Your daughter might have Down syndrome. She has an embossed forehead. And you know what? That doesn't make a baby's life any less important. It doesn't make you love your child any less as a mother. You're going to love your child no matter what. And I just want to thank you for fighting this fight, because there are so many of us out there who get told by the medical professionals we're supposed to trust that, you should abort. Your baby's not going to have a good life. And that's not that's not our call to make. That's God's call to make.
Absolutely. And God made her perfect,
God made
exactly how she's meant to be. And we love little petite people. Why not? Like,
Exactly. Short people have fun. I'm tall, but short people have fun too. There's nothing wrong with her.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. You are just such an inspiration to me and a voice for so many other children and mothers who are going through the same thing. I'm sure, as you explained, it was terrifying to hear all of those diagnoses, but your daughter was made perfect in the image of God, and that's all that matters.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Could I give you a hug?
How are you enjoying the conference so far?
It's awesome. I love being here. Always the highlight of my summer.
Good times, good times. So, you've been a Christian your whole life.
Yes, ma'am.
What is something that your opinion has changed on over time as your faith has grown?
I think that one thing that my opinion hasn't necessarily changed on, but I've become so much more firm in, is like this concept of immigration and having a closed border and understanding that we can love people, but also loving people can be upholding the values of our country and protecting our people. And so I think for a long time it was really easy for me to kind of be like, oh, I don't really know how I feel about immigration. Like if people need, a safe haven or like rescue from somewhere else that they're at, like why don't we just let them in? Because I didn't really have the understanding that actually isn't loving to so many people here. And we've seen so many people who have been victims of illegal immigration, and even just the fact that illegal immigrants take away from American jobs and they're infringing on American healthcare and eating our food and all of these things when they aren't paying taxes, they aren't legal citizens, and there's so many people who are immigrants who do it the right way, and it's so not fair to them either.
Love that, and it's also very true. What is one thing that you are taking away from YWLS that has just like blown your mind?
One thing that just blows my mind every year is just how different femininity and feminism are, and this concept of wearing beautiful dresses and taking care in our appearance, and just like being a woman of the Lord, and loving people and being kind in that way, but how that's so different from this like modern concept of feminism, and this idea that you can like be a girl boss and do all the things, and this almost like toxic culture of being like against other women. And I don't love the conflict, but seeing like the issue arise between like Riley Gaines and Simone Biles right now, and just like seeing that like stark contrast of feminism and femininity has been really interesting, and then seeing how she's handled that this week has been so sweet too.
So you work at a summer camp. Will you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I work at a camp for kids and adults with special needs. Each camper comes in and they get a buddy that's a volunteer, and so as a staffer, I get to run a lot of the activities, and we run the cabins and just are there to support our volunteers. But it's really sweet to see so many people with different physical and mental abilities, and how the Lord still reveals himself. And so we share the gospel through every activity we do. So we'll have 12 different activity sessions throughout the week, and at every activity we share the gospel. We go through something called the 5 Ps, so we open and close with prayer, and we do something called processing, where we'll connect every activity to the gospel. And it's so sweet that so many people that will honestly like doubt their abilities and doubt what they're capable of, just because it might be a little bit different from what you and I are capable of or what our everyday looks like. But it's so sweet to see how so many people will know who the Lord is and accept that. My favorite moment was we had these 2 young girls go down the water slide, and they had some like intellectual disabilities, and they go down the water slide, and at the end they sat and they turned around and they faced each other, and this one girl prays and she thanks the Lord for the other girl, and then her friend prays and thanks the Lord for her friend, and then they both repeat after each other, "Dear God, God loves me." And so it was just like so sweet to see how like it was connecting, and they were understanding that like the Lord really does love them, and it's just so inspiring, like that childlike faith and how literally they take that, and it's just the sweetest thing.
Amazing. And so often we hear in women's pregnancies, when they're diagnosed that their child is going to have some kind of disability or potential disability, they are encouraged to abort. And so what would you tell the people who are thinking that a life of special needs or a life with disability is not worth the value of a normal life? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that I would probably word it a little bit nicer, but quite frankly, there is no way that if you were to meet anybody who would have a similar disability to like what it is that your child may be diagnosed with, that there's no way that they have a worse off life than we do, because so often it can be easier for them to find joy. And there's so much that I can learn from people who have different abilities than me. But also statistics have shown over time that a lot of diagnoses that they will give your kids in the womb will prove not to be true, or those diagnoses they'll find to be false within the weeks after, before you've even had your kid. So I would never make a decision to abort a child based on a disability ever, but especially because statistically that diagnosis is not correct most of the time.
You are pro Second Amendment, and she's a really good shot. I've seen it. So tell us about how you can be a woman, you can be pro-woman, and you can be Christian and pro-love, but also be supportive of the Second Amendment and know your rights and be a really good shot.
Well, you're a great shot too, don't worry. I've seen it, y'all. But I would say that I feel like people will talk about the Second Amendment and they'll like paint this picture of like a violent shooter and whatnot, but they forget that the Second Amendment is for our protection, and that people who do dangerous things usually have some kind of mental disorder or something like that. And the issue is not the weapon itself, but it's the heart of the person. And so if I throw a rock at someone and injure them with it, the issue is not the rock, the issue is my heart. And so to me, being pro Second Amendment is so feminine, because I feel protected by like knowing how to handle a weapon and like feeling confident that if I had one on me and needed it, that like I would be able to do something about it. But also like I would feel confident to like protect kids around me or to protect other people. And my mom is a wonderful example. She carries all the time everywhere we go, and she always carries at church. And she is one of the few volunteers in kids ministry who does that. But she's like, what happens if someone comes in the church? And what happens if someone comes towards kids ministry? She was like, I have the power and I have the ability to protect these kids, so why wouldn't I? And I think that's such a great example.
What is your hottest take?
Oh, that's hard. Actually, at this conference, I've heard a lot of people, a lot of girls that I've talked to are super career driven, but also there's like two separate sides. But I am super into I want to be a mom, I want to homeschool. Career is important, but it's definitely on my back burner, so I don't know if that's like kind of a good answer.
Yeah, I love that. I totally love that. What is the strangest thing about liberals?
Oh my word. I really don't understand how they think it's normal to go around with ears on, and it just blows my mind. Like some of the things they do and like how they expect people not to think it's strange is really weird.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. The furries are a little strange, for sure.
That's probably that's what throws me off.
Yes. What was the biggest takeaway from this conference?
Oh, that's so hard. But there have been so many things. Lila Rose was probably my favorite. Her courage and her drive to get the word out, and it's an unpopular opinion among so many girls my age in the world, saving babies, and it was so inspiring to me, and I think that was my highlight. The biggest thing was hearing her speak, talking about how important babies in the womb are, and they are human, and it's so important to get the word out. So that's been the most inspiring to me out of everything, which everything was amazing though. So
beautiful. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. I'm here with another Savannah. We share the best names ever. Okay. And she wants to share a little bit about her story.
Yeah, so being here at a women's summit always makes me think back to when I was pregnant first. I'm actually pregnant with our second child now. I'm married to a wonderful man, but a year and a half ago, I didn't know how my life was gonna turn out. I was dating a wonderful man, and we made some mistakes, and I found out that I was pregnant very early along, probably like 3 or 4 weeks, with this lovely girl right here. And the way he reacted, I always say, changed everything. I think that he reacted in a way that is an example. Are you gonna talk too? That is an example to so many men. The first thing he said when I took that pregnancy test was, I'm a dad, I'm so excited. He wanted to tell everyone. He was so excited. And, I was very scared. Even though I work in the pro-life movement, I knew there was gonna be backlash, and there was backlash. Most of my friends and connections, what are you doing? Most of my friends and connections are in the pro-life movement as well, but I got a lot more hate than you would think. And I think that it shows an area that we need growth in the movement, which is when one of our own, who is, trying to practice these Christian, moral values messes up and, does something that obviously is against the commandment. How do we show compassion, and how do we recognize the difference between the act that obviously was wrong and what came from the act, which is a beautiful new life, which is totally good. So anyway, that's a little bit about my story. I think that it really showed a divide, and I think that we need to bridge that divide by saying, hey, yeah, I can acknowledge that sex before marriage is wrong in so many ways. It goes against natural law, but at the same time, when people mess up, there's still beauty that can come from that. God can bring beauty from ashes.
Yes. Always hate the sin, not the sinner, and be an example for others. We want babies to be born, and like myself, I was born out of wedlock, and every baby is a gift, no matter how they come to be. And so thank you so much for embracing that, choosing life, not listening to all the noise, and just choosing what was, best for your baby and yourself.
Well, and here's one other thing that I will say. I think that sometimes when we sin, try to get out of that sin, we compound the sin, right? And we're like, okay, what can I do to get out of this? Oh, have an abortion. Oh, that's taking your life. That's another sin on top of a sin. And you just get yourself into this cycle. And it happens with sex outside of marriage, but it also happens with other things that we try to hide and cover up lies and all this stuff. And I will say, when we got pregnant and we owned it and we were so excited, and now she's the biggest joy of our life. And we were like, okay, he proposed to me. We got married. Now we have a wonderful life. And, people who meet us now, nobody would know that she was conceived in a very uncertain time, because we stood up and prayed a lot, and God helped us get through that hard time to make this beautiful life that we have right now.
Absolutely. One thing that our generation has a big problem with is taking responsibility for our actions. We want to be like, well, I did this action, but now I'm shocked that this happened. Right. And it's you knew what you were doing, and it was so mature of you, because I know that both of us were so young, to again, just not listen to what all the outside was saying, and do exactly what a godly woman is supposed to do, is listen to herself, listen to God, listen to her husband. And I just applaud you for that. You're definitely a role model for so many young women. So.
Well, thank you, Savannah. And last thing I will say, and then I will be done. Last thing I will say is, way more women are struggling with this than we realize. I got so many DMs after I shared my story. So many, dozens, probably hundreds. This is an area that we need to talk about more. And we need to support women. Women support women in this way, not in helping them get an abortion, ending their life with their child.
Thank you. We are here at YWLS in Dallas, Texas, and I'm at the Blexit booth with these two beautiful ladies. And I just wanted to ask you guys, what do you think is the best advice that we can give to Black women today?
Yeah, so I think it's very important for Black women today to realize that a lot of us were raised with conservative values, but of course we were taught to lean far left, and that is just a part of the culture that we were immersed in. And so many are wondering, what can I do? What should I do to get out of this and to line up more so with my values? So I just encourage Black women to reach out, do some research, and see, that there's a place for them here. So,
what about you?
I will encourage women to just think a little bit more critically about the issues that they're trying to fight against, especially in regards to abortion, because we try to equate that to reproductive health, and just learning the history of that and who Margaret Sanger actually is. It kind of just encouraged me to actually participate in Blexit, and just trying to, I guess, put God in the center of your relationship. Sometimes we kind of equate conservative to, demonizing conservative views and stuff like that. So I just encourage them to just try to put God into the center in everything you do, and then everything else will kind of align and fall into place. Yeah.
And were either of you previously on the left or more left-leaning? Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And then, so what was the turning point for you?
Yeah. So the turning point for me was I was already leaning, more so I was moderate. And I've always said, I believe in balance. So I believe in having values values from both sides. But I really realized, especially around 2020, that with the left side, a lot of things were against my values. And so, I more so did a lot of research into the conservative side and realized that everything that I was against, so was the conservative side. So I just feel like there's a better place here, and it aligns with my family, our needs, and our beliefs.
It took a relationship, honestly. I was dating a very hardcore Republican, and he kind of challenged me to think a little bit more politically because I was so political illiterate. I didn't know anything. I didn't even want to touch it, So the breaking point was that for me personally, it's just the whole idea of abortion for me and how it was designed and how, the purpose of it was to eradicate, the Black community. And because I was completely pro-choice and I didn't even understand what that meant. I was just like, oh yeah, everyone has the right to do what they want to do with their bodies. But in reality, we're encouraging murder. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, that was the breaking point for me.
Last question, how has Blexit impacted your life?
So Blexit for me is very empowering because I feel like, especially coming here to this event, but just in general, I'm around like minds. I have found my place, and I feel like the women here and just everyone who's a part of the organization and men as well are helping each other reach out into our community and showing our community that there is a place and there's change and we can have it, but we have to take that action forward to start.
For me, like she said, I resonated with you, like just being around like-minded people kind of encouraged me that I'm in the right place, right? You know what I mean? And like I said, like I can see that God is the focal point of everything that Turning Point USA does, especially with Blexit, and everything else would just align after that. So that's what encouraged me to sign up because I knew that I needed to strengthen my faith, and I was kind of that lukewarm Christian, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Well, thank you ladies so much. I appreciate both of you. You have been in the public eye basically most of your life, and you have 19 kids. That's incredible. How have you dealt with the backlash over the decades of being in the public eye, having this different family, and where do you put your faith?
Well, I just said this the other day to a young lady, and I feel like the most important thing is that we speak the truth in our heart, and we can't speak the truth in our heart if we don't know the truth. So first off, you've got to know Jesus, and Jesus offers salvation to anyone who's humble before him. And secondly, you know the Word of God because it fills us up, and then it just spills out. And I think there's always going to be competing affections in this life. There will be things that will come at us. But if we know the truth will set us free. And we speak that truth in our heart. And it refutes the lies, because there's always the lies that will bombard. There's no value. You're not worth. But you know what? Jesus says we're worth him going to the cross. Children are a blessing and a gift. The world says they're a burden and they're not, they don't bring us value. And yet God's word says totally different. So when we know that truth, the truth sets us free.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. What advice would you have for a young woman who maybe is approaching her college years, but she doesn't really want to go to college? She wants to meet the man of her dreams, meet a man of the Lord, and start a family.
Well, I say to that, you know what? Each one, God's going to call them into a path. And I think you learn this. I've always told my kids, life is a learning classroom. You never stop learning. So college, maybe for some that need some things that they want to gain for that. But ultimately, you grow in the skills of life, and in the timing that God has. If you're to be married, he will bring that one into your life, and hopefully he'll bless you with children. If not, there's other avenues. God gives adoption, foster parenting. There's so many options that God may bring about, but ultimately it's that path of walking with the Lord. Those that love the Lord, that are born again, that love Jesus, we just keep our focus on Christ, and He will lead us in the way that He would have us to go. So as I've raised my kids, I've told them, I said, you are learning throughout your life the skills that God would have for you. There's absolutely nothing you can't learn if God intends for you to do it. You don't have to go to college to do all the things. I think early on when Jim Hub and I met, we just had a desire to walk with Jesus together and make a difference in this world. And we got our real estate license, we got an insurance license together. We did those things along the way. But I know when God gave us children, I set those things aside to raise my kids and pour into them the love of God, the Word of God, and prayed that God would just use them in their life to make a difference. And so I think anybody can learn anything that God intends for them to learn, whether that means through skills, through apprenticing under somebody, or maybe going to college for a while to learn those things. But ultimately, I think God gives women the ability to nurture and love, and often to have those children if He blesses them that way. And I think don't waste these years. Focus on the things that God has called you to do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, bless